Don't see the family resemblance? Here's a hint. I must find the Avatar to restore my honor.
Azula was designed to be the perfect villain in Avatar, The Last Airbender, calculating, ruthless, and always 3 steps ahead of our heroes. But what if the story took a different turn? What if after Mai and Ty Lee betrayed her at the Boiling Rock, something inside Azula finally broke, but instead of descending into madness, she found clarity? In today's video, we're exploring the fascinating alternate timeline where Azula joins Team Avatar. Picture her conflicted expression, the perfect mask finally cracking. How would Katara react to the girl who almost killed Aang, and could Azula's military genius end the war sooner? Through character dynamics and strategic what-ifs, we'll examine whether the Avatar's greatest enemy could find redemption, or if some wounds prove too deep to heal. Picture this: the Boiling Rock prison, the moment that everything changed for Azula. Her perfect world built on fear and control completely shattered when Mai and Ty Lee, her only friends, betrayed her. But what if instead of spiraling further into darkness, this became the turning point that changed Azula's destiny forever? Back at the royal palace, Azula sits alone in her chambers, the stifling silence broken only by distant palace guards changing shifts. Mai's words echo through her thoughts. I love Zuko more than I fear you. The revelation pierces her like lightning. Her friends chose Zuko over her, chose love over fear. The metallic taste of defeat fills her mouth as the foundation of everything she believed crumbles. The perfect princess trembles, her fingernails digging into her palms until they leave marks. The acrid scent of oil lamps burns her nostrils as night deepens around her. What if her father had been wrong? What if fear wasn't the ultimate power? These thoughts feel like treason, but connect dots that were always separate. Her mother's troubled glances, her father's conditional praise. How quickly Ozai discarded Zuko. Would he do the same to her if she failed? Standing before her mirror, she studies her reflection. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect posture. The weight of her mother's words suddenly resurfaces. What is wrong with that child? But in the cold silence of her room, those words transform. What if her mother wasn't disappointed but worried? What if Ursa had seen what Ozai was creating and tried to save her from becoming a weapon of destruction? Unfamiliar tears form as Azula confronts the truth. All her achievements had earned her what? A father who would discard her just like Zuko. No real friends. A mother who left because she couldn't bear to watch what Ozai was turning her into. The faint smell of jasmine from the garden, her mother's favorite, drifts through her window, stirring memories long suppressed. She retrieves an old family portrait from her drawer. Before Zuko's banishment, before her mother disappeared, her fingers trace her mother's face, feeling the texture of the parchment, connecting to something real beyond fear and power. By dawn, something shifts within her. If her father's way leads only to isolation, perhaps it's time to question everything. Azula packs only essentials, practical clothes instead of royal finery, a knife instead of her crown. As sunrise paints her room in golden light, she slips through secret passages only the royal family knows. The greatest tactical mind in the Fire Nation makes her most daring move. Not against an enemy, but toward an uncertain future where maybe she could find something her father never gave her: unconditional acceptance. The blue flames cut through the darkness like a knife. Team Avatar's peaceful evening shatters as everyone jumps to their feet at the sight of Azula walking calmly toward their campfire. Her royal armor replaced with simple traveling clothes, her hands visible and non-threatening. I want to join you, she says, the words hanging in the air like smoke. Katara's distrust manifests instantly as her water whip materializes, suspended and ready. Sokka grips his boomerang while stepping protectively in front of his sister. Aang raises his palms toward both sides. Wait, let's hear what she has to say, he pleads. Though his staff remains close by, Zuko's face contorts with complex emotions. Having spent his childhood as Azula's target, memories of her manipulations flood back, making his scar seem to burn anew. But something in her demeanor stops him from attacking outright. Her eyes lack their usual predatory gleam. This is obviously a trap, Katara hisses. Toph, unusually quiet until now, speaks up. She's telling the truth. Her bare feet remain planted firmly on the ground, or at least she believes what she's saying. Everyone turns to Toph in disbelief. Her heart's beating like crazy, but in the terrified way, not the lying way. Terrified? Azula? The contradiction hangs in the air as they stare at the Fire Nation princess who conquered Ba Sing Se, now looking almost vulnerable. Why should we believe you? Sokka challenges, his tactical mind already calculating escape routes. As night deepens, so does their debate. Azula sits at the camp's edge, waiting for judgment. Her perfect posture remains, but something about her seems deflated, as though her inner fire has temporarily dimmed. She shot lightning through Aang's heart. Katara reminds everyone, voice trembling with rage. Everyone deserves a second chance. Aang counters, optimistic as ever. I don't trust her, Sokka adds. Think about what she knows. Battle plans, palace layouts, her father's weaknesses. That information could win us the war. Throughout this, Zuko remains silent, his eyes never leaving his sister. Finally, he stands. I'll talk to her, alone. He approaches Azula carefully, sitting across from her with a small fire between them, mirroring their childhood training session. Why now? He asks simply. The question hangs between them, loaded with a lifetime of competition and pain. For once, Azula doesn't have a calculated answer ready. Because I realized father would do to me exactly what he did to you. The moment I failed him, something shifts in Zuko's expression. Recognition. He knows better than anyone what it means to fall from Ozai's grace. Zuko might recognize the pain of falling from Ozai's grace, but Katara sees only the monster who shot lightning through Aang's heart. Have you ever wondered what happens when you force together two elements that naturally destroy each other? When water meets blue fire, they create violent steam and hissing destruction. Yet this collision might somehow create something entirely new. In those tense days after Azula joined them, Katara becomes the group's unofficial warden. She positions herself like a human barrier, her sleeping bag strategically placed between Azula and everyone else, water pouch uncorked beneath her pillow. While others eventually relax during meals or training, Katara's eyes track the princess's every movement, her distrust manifesting in sharp comments that cut through any attempt at conversation with reminders of past betrayals. Azula meets this hostility with her trademark smirk, though something flickers behind her eyes each time Katara shoots another verbal barb her way. Is the peasant afraid I'll murder everyone in their sleep? Azula taunts one evening. Katara's water whip materializes inches from the princess's throat before anyone can blink. Try it, Katara whispers, and you won't live to regret it. Everything changes during a surprise attack by a Fire Nation patrol. Katara finds herself flanked by soldiers. She doesn't see the spear arcing toward her back, but Azula does. Blue flames shoot past Katara's ear, incinerating the weapon mid-thrust. Their eyes meet in mutual shock. Neither expected Azula to protect anyone but herself. After that, Katara begins noticing things about Azula she hadn't allowed herself to see before. The princess struggles with basic campsite tasks, burning rice, tangling fishing line, constructing collapsing tents. Didn't they teach survival skills in the Royal Academy? Katara finally asks. They taught me to conquer nations, not cook dinner, Azula responds, frustration cracking through her composure. Something shifts then. Not friendship, but recognition of each other's humanity. Azula studies how Katara nurtures the group. One night, Katara catches Azula watching her comfort Toph after a nightmare. Who did that for you when you were scared? The princess turns away without answering, but the question hangs between them like morning mist over water. Their breakthrough comes during a stormy night in a cave. Azula thrashes in her sleep, murmuring, "Mother, please," before waking to find Katara beside her. Like opposing currents meeting in the same river, they pause in silence. My mother used to sing when the nightmares came, Katara offers. Azula's mockery dies when she sees no pity in Katara's eyes, only recognition of shared loss. Mine never sang, Azula whispers. She just looked at me like I was already lost. While Team Avatar gradually adjusts to Azula's presence emotionally, they have yet to fully appreciate what they've truly gained. Fire Nation's most dangerous weapon isn't her blue flames, but the calculating mind that nearly brought down the Earth Kingdom. When Sokka unrolls his invasion plans one morning, Azula's unexpected laughter sends chills through the camp, but what she says next changes everything about how they've been fighting this war. You're planning to face my father with this? Azula asks, pointing at Sokka's carefully drawn map spread across the ground. The group tenses, expecting mockery, but instead she kneels beside them. Your approach is fundamentally flawed. You've been thinking like insurgents when you need to think like conquerors. In one fluid motion, she flips Sokka's maps over and begins drawing her own diagrams with precise, practiced strokes. The group watches in stunned silence as an entirely new strategy emerges. Over several days, Azula transforms their approach to defeating the Fire Lord. "My father is just one man surrounded by an entire power structure," she explains while sketching the hierarchy of Fire Nation leadership. Remove his support system first, and he becomes vulnerable. Her fingers trace coal supply lines fueling the war machines, and identifies admirals whose loyalty to Ozai is purely transactional. These men would abandon him immediately if offered amnesty, she notes with cold efficiency. Sokka watches with mixed feelings as his role as strategist is overshadowed. "Your plan showed creativity with limited information," Azula tells him matter-of-factly. "But now you have me." By nightfall, they're combining his out-of-the-box thinking with her insider knowledge. The day of Black Sun invasion had no chance, Azula reveals while outlining the bunker system beneath the capital. "Father has evacuation tunnels extending for miles, and the war balloons you encountered. There are hundreds more being constructed in hidden factories." She indicates key supply routes that, if disrupted during guard changes, would cripple weapon production without casualties. "The Fire Nation military operates on absolute obedience and fear," Azula continues. "If we create the perception that Ozai's leadership is faltering, his commanders will begin hedging their bets." Aang listens, conflicted but unable to deny its potential to reduce bloodshed. What emerges is a strategy of targeted strikes against symbolic locations rather than military strongholds. Disrupting communication lines, liberating key supply depots for the message it sends, using their royal status to create confusion about who truly speaks for the throne. "In the Fire Nation, perception is reality," Azula explains. "My father rules through the illusion of invincibility. Shatter that illusion among his inner circle, and half our battle is won before we ever face him." The strategic genius that makes Azula so valuable to Team Avatar masks a deeper battle raging within her mind. While she expertly dismantles her father's empire from the outside, who's helping her dismantle the empire he built inside her head? Behind closed doors, away from strategy sessions, Azula's struggle manifests as she methodically arranges her possessions in perfect symmetry until her fingers bleed. The perfectionism that made her unstoppable now turns inward as a weapon against herself. Her transition from feared princess to team member brings challenges during training. When Aang compliments her firebending form, Azula freezes, suspicious of praise without demands. During a sparring match with Katara, a small mistake causes Azula to freeze completely, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid as sweat beads on her forehead. The others watch worriedly as she excuses herself, later finding her practicing the same move hundreds of times in isolation. Azula approaches morality with the same precision she once applied to conquest. During a village raid for supplies, she argues, "If we're fighting a war, we should use every advantage. Half measures get you killed." When the team refuses to steal despite their desperate circumstances, she's genuinely confused. Later at camp, she asks Aang, "There aren't manuals for being good. How am I supposed to master something with no clear metrics for success?" Toph becomes an unexpected ally when she follows Azula after a tactical disagreement. "You know what your problem is, princess?" Toph says, sitting beside her. "You think everything's about being perfect when it's really about being strong. Perfect breaks, strong bends." She demonstrates by bending a rock into different shapes. See? Still strong. This simplicity cuts through Azula's defenses in a way complex arguments never could. A breakthrough comes after arguing with Zuko about their mother. Memories flood back, not just the abandonment, but years of emotional suppression. She collapses into a panic attack, gasping for air as her chest constricts painfully. Aang sits with her through the night, teaching air nomad breathing techniques. "Your whole life you've been taught that control comes from suppression," he explains. "True control comes from understanding all parts of yourself and finding balance. Progress comes in tiny steps." She tells Sokka his joke was marginally amusing. She offers Katara technical advice without mockery. The most powerful moment comes when she instinctively shields Aang from danger, not because he's tactically valuable, but because she genuinely cares. The realization both terrifies and exhilarates her as she discovers connections beyond usefulness and fear. And so we reach the end of our journey through this alternate timeline where Azula chose a different path. But what does this reimagining really teach us? The truth is that Azula's transformation reveals something powerful about redemption itself. It's not about erasing who you were, but building who you could become. Her evolution from manipulator to trusted ally transformed Team Avatar's dynamics in ways no one could have predicted. The princess who once controlled through fear discovered something revolutionary in their shared battles and quiet quiet moments together, genuine human connection without manipulation. Perhaps the most important lesson is that nobody is permanently defined by their mistake. Redemption isn't something we're given, it's something we choose, one imperfect day at a time. What might be possible in your own life if you took that first terrifying step toward change?